we can get started. I'm just going to get rid of this if I can. Stop that sharing. So we just have us. So, what we thought we'd do today with the panel is give each of you a chance to opine about the way forward. I think we've had really a day with some extremely interesting perspectives on where we are right now across the whole spectrum. Our opening session with Joel Tickner was really meant to get us thinking about the next stages of assessing and optimizing, which of necessity are going to involve not just picking things that avoid certain things, but working proactively to create products that are safer and more sustainable by design. And we've heard from Stacy also about the tools that she is developing and the Safer Chemistry Impact Fund with which we are participating, that are all means toward moving us in that direction. And of course, we have the certification and rating systems that help us understand what those opportunities are and work proactively at the manufacturer and project team level to really select those safer and more sustainable solutions, increasingly in a multi-attribute environment, which is really awesome. So with that, let me just ask that first question. So to our panelists, and each of you will have a few minutes to give some thoughts on this question. What do you see as the greatest opportunities for advancing material health practice in the coming 1 to 2 years from where we are today? And we've seen some great leading edge examples. One thing it's always important to think about, because we become creatures of habit and we just do things because we always did do them. Are there some things maybe that we've been doing that take up time and resources that maybe aren't on the critical path to those safer and sustainable products? Can we focus? Are there some things we've learned are less valuable, but take up resources? Any ideas on that? And how can our audience of material health practitioners spanning manufacturers, project teams, building owners, other ecosystem participants, what are some ideas for what they can do? And some of you have already shared those in your presentations, but with that, I will turn it over. Who would like to go first?
We're shy, Wendy.
Yeah, you got to volunteer us.
I have to call on somebody. Terry, tag, you're it.
I knew you were going to do that if I opened my mouth.
You probably learned that during school when you did that same thing, right?
I sat in the back. Okay. First of all, I want to say hi to Monica. Hi, Monica. And I saw Wes last week, and I already got to say hi to Stacy. So, well, we all of us here on the whole summit and also on this call, we're kind of in our own world of problems that we're trying to solve. So I think I can probably only speak to my perspective on the problems that I'm trying to solve. So I feel like, going back to what my talk was about, was that I think LEED version 4 just catalyzed the industry and made it possible for people to rally around something to do, which was make manufacturers be transparent, make them create EPDs, make them create material disclosures, and make them put them out there. And it was wildly successful. I mean, if you look at the growth, I mean, I love when Wes shares his stats, and we track those same stats in the catalog. Like I said, when we launched the catalog in 2016, there were only 350 manufacturers anywhere in the world who had invested in EPDs and material health disclosures for products in North America. Now it's thousands, and we've lived through that. So I think the next step, and I think LEED version 5, and we'll work on our comments next week, Wes, is starting to get people now to go further than just check the box. There is one. Is really to get people to be more knowledgeable. We talk to manufacturers day in and day out. performance matters. And environmental performance and material health are performance attributes that people are using today to make decisions about products. If that's true, then we have to deliver the knowledge and tools to the design and construction industry to make it easy for them to understand what the information means, so they actually can make better decisions about higher performing products that should lead to reducing the impacts on the built and natural environment, which we're all trying to do. So, I think there's many things, and I think that was kind of a lot of aha moments last week at the Mindful Materials Summit around, what Mindful Materials has been great at doing is convening people with big ideas and focusing them on, solving this problem of how do you select materials that are, with all of these different attributes that can be reported on, how do we just get our arms around doing that? And now how do we take, the knowledge in that common materials framework and teach people how to use it? So teach people how to use it, give them tools to be able to use it so that we're literally operationalizing better material, higher performing material selection to, make that actionable and close the time gap between, now and, the world going off the edge of a cliff. So that's my 2 cents.
Maybe I'll pick up from there. That's great, Terry. And thanks again for convening this, Wendy and team. I think, so what can you see the greatest opportunity? I think it's exactly what you're saying, Terry. It's like, I'd love to see this industry, especially, and I'll selfishly talk about LEED because that's what we work on the most, right? Do a better job at reporting out on outcomes. So it's one thing, okay, you got 20 EPDs or something, but we can start to now with this new framework of the Common Materials Framework and the AIA Materials Pledge, we can start to categorize impacts and we can start to quantify them better. And with the tools you see, everything from the HPDC tools to the databases and the workflow tools and product libraries and things that are out there, they're getting more aligned on the back end with the digital stuff, which I think is super important. So we're able to start having the reporting. One of the things that we've heard from LEED version 5 is that it's complex, right? These new credit requirements are complicated, it's complex. But I'm hopeful that the tools, and I think that's something in the next couple of years, can really speed up adoption and make the reporting part just sort of automatic. So you go about your business of finding and selecting good products and manufacturers making good products. And at the end of the day, you can see where that adds up. And there's reporting and metrics and things that you can use. And then Stacey, I love the work you guys do in taking all that and showing, hey, it's not that unknown. And there's actually some great wins here we should take credit for. So I think the storytelling piece of it is something that all of this in the next couple of years, hopefully will get even better. So I'd love to add that to the conversation.
Well, and
So Barbara, I know you had a little bit of trouble. We're just on that first question about the opportunities for advancing material health. It's within this multi-attribute framework, but it's one of the, perhaps the most complex component of it, right? So have at it.
yeah, and I'll jump on what Wes was saying that built on what Terry's saying. And coming from that mindful materials and the whole summit and the concept of aligning aligning owner, I agree with everything that was said before, but aligning the demand so that there is consistent demand between the owners, and Mindful's been doing that really well with the owners forum. The owners there and GSPI, like there's been a lot of effort around there, but it needs to get to the next level and the tent needs to be bigger. If every owner is asking, then every project team needs to comply. And the demand signal is there, and that will, manufacturers can't do things that don't meet the demand. They're just not going to do it. So we need the information. We need that data, the scientific basis. We need the tools to scale. But if the demand isn't there, we're gonna, be frustrated with all these efforts. So, if you're an owner you're already here, so it's like speaking to the choir. But if you're a designer, you need to advocate to your owners. You need to tell them there's a place where all the cool kids are and they need to join it. They need to join whatever place they can to be with the other owners who the global tech companies and other large owners are starting to look at how can we make our standards as similar as possible. It's never going to be perfect, but what's that overlap? And can we make the overlap big enough so that there is a really strong demand? That and some of the other things in terms of tools and resources, in our Global Buyers Club obviously would support that, but we're digitizing the common materials framework Q&A. So designers can all have one place that's digitized so they can look, first of all, has it been asked and answered, to relieve the burden on manufacturers answering 25,000 questions in 17 million formats, but also designer time, saving designer time. Has it been asked and answered? Then I don't need to ask again, but I can add my name to that list and my firm's name to show the demand.
Maybe I'll go next because Barbara, I think we were reading each other's minds. When I saw your questions, Wendy, I just kept thinking about demand, that if there's one thing, where is the greatest opportunity? If there's maybe one thing we can all focus on in the next 1 or 2 years to really think about how to accelerate a move to, healthy materials and products. I kept thinking about this notion of really trying to rev up the demand engine for safer chemicals, safer materials, and safer products. I feel like we've always been on the, safer chemistry, healthy material side. We've always been a bit of the ugly stepchild in the sustainability world. And I think that has accelerated to some degree over time with a focus on climate. I mean, I think we all know about this and we deal with this day to day. And as companies are just being pressured to do more carbon reporting and reduce carbon emissions, I feel like, the prominence, the importance of safer chemistry, healthy materials has sort of declined. But I think there's an opportunity maybe to sort of stage a comeback with a lot of the concern that's being expressed now in the news about chemicals of concern in consumer products and so forth. And, it seems like, interest is returning, and I think we could seize that opportunity a bit. But I think we need to keep just pushing on the demand for what we're all trying to accomplish. And, in the built environment, there's a little bit more of a demand signal coming from green building standards like LEED, for example, federal procurement. In the consumer product space, I mean, what do we have really? I mean, I think it's largely what I'm seeing is, some retailer platforms now that are starting to distinguish better products, and you have product manufacturers that are trying to get their products recognized on these retailer platforms. But I think we need to look at where the demand is coming from now and how we can really amp that up, whether it's with, designers that are starting to develop their own sustainable standards and how we can, support them in accelerating that work. What we can do in green building schemes with these platforms, et cetera, to just amp up the demand signal that's getting pulled through here. It's really, a lot of what Barbara was saying. I would agree with that.
I'll chime in as the last, and I don't want to. I want to emphasize what all the previous speakers have said. We need to make info more available. We need to report on impact. The demand signals need to be there. All so important. And from my perspective, the one thing that we can add to this puzzle is the movement towards chemical hazard assessments. It's something we've always had on the roadmap. in the built environment, but it hasn't been accessible, affordable, scalable. And I think we're there now. Like, it's taken us 6 years. I haven't been really part of the built environment for 6 years. I'm so happy to have the connection with Wendy and the Healthy Building Habitable, formerly Healthy Building Network. But what we've been able to do is really bring chemical hazard assessments to scale and now connect them automatically, to the HPD builder. And I'll say, I think that if I had a wish on this whole thing, it would be like, where is the coalition of the willing within the built environment? Is it here? Is it the Health Product Declaration Collaborative? Is it one of the associations, that's made a lot of progress on optimization? And let's show what we can do with characterization and how much optimization. And once once we're fully characterized, it's a pipeline to third-party certifications like Cradle to Cradle, once those assessments, already exist. So I think it's my wish is to find the coalition of the willing to take the next step into chemical hazard assessment and characterization, and I hope some folks will express real interest in the pilot, Wendy, and say turn it on for me. So
I think this
I-
is a great point, Stacy, about the data gaps, because certainly in the time I've been involved, I think many of you know, both on the panel and who are online with us, that my own background came from the computing industry, where I worked for many, many years. And so I got involved with this because Bill Walsh, who many of us know at the time was the executive director of the now Habitable, former Healthy Building Network, was, very early on, one of the ones asking these very same questions. And it became clear to him, 15, 20 years ago, that the approaches of the past, which focused, and they're important, which focused on picking a chemical and trying to eliminate it, were being held back. Because people would say, well, why that chemical? How do you know that chemical? Well, you've picked a couple places where that chemical is used. But what about all the other places? And what about all the other chemicals? And so the data gaps, which in those days were far greater in both the built environment and many other industry segments that have taken action since then, were actually holding back the ability to go after reducing and eliminating a particular chemical, even though the body of knowledge that was available said, hey, that's an important thing to do. So we went to work with this initiative here, what became the HPD, on closing that gap. And so one thing is just, what manufacturers know from their supply chain and all the rest. But one of the things we ran headlong into is this issue about linking the chemical ingredients. Okay, we've got them all. But guess what? Half the ones aren't characterized. And then how do we prioritize? That's a big job. That's a lot of work. How do we prioritize? And I think this is, the methodology that Chem Forward has really advanced, that, is an important one. Barbara.
Can't figure out how to make that go away, but yeah, I want to underscore that this, I think a lot of designers don't understand to what degree manufacturers do not have this data. Well, either do not have this data, do not have all the data, do not necessarily have great mapping and visibility into their supply chains. This is not just about, oh, these manufacturers have all the data and they need to get it, they need to have it transparent. It's a tremendous effort for them sometimes to even figure out where things are coming from. Like they don't all have PIM systems. They don't all have PMDS systems. So on the design side, we need to understand that this is not just because they're stubborn or not interested. It's a huge endeavor. It's difficult. It can be costly. And I think mostly, seeing as a lot of the work I do is on the change management side in organizations, it's different. So starting to do anything that's different or initiating anything in a large corporation like that ain't easy. You got to get buy-in, you got to get leadership to sign off on it, you got to make an investment, you got to use tools, you got to oh my God, that's no excuse. But I'm saying, I think, and I think Wes said something about that. necessarily have empathy or understand how difficult it is to get there. But that's what I think the demand is all about. Like when that demand is there, there's a lot more incentive for them to get over that huge hurdle of like, how do we get organized? How do we get our data together? I mean, we're starting to get data now directly from manufacturers, and there are no two the same. Like it's not like, just plug into our database and there it is. So we need to really encourage manufacturers to take that step. It'll benefit them too. Having that data organized and accessible and manageable is only going to benefit them, the companies who have done it. Manufacturers, if you're on here and you have done it, please share your lessons learned with other manufacturers that aren't competitors, because we all need to make it easier. Well, hopefully easier, but we all need to make it happen.
So Barbara, thank you so much for bringing that up, because up until maybe, a year or two ago, Sustainable Minds, we only worked with product manufacturers. We're a program operator, we convene PCR committees, we deliver LCA and material ingredient services, we publish EPDs. So that is that is true. It is scary, it's expensive, it's difficult. And our whole approach when we speak with building construction industry professionals, I start out by saying Sustainable Minds is the advocate for the manufacturer. That is who we represent, because those people are spending a lot of time, spending a lot of money. It's hard, it's risky. And if they're creating disclosures because you've asked for them, then you need to buy their products. That's the quid pro quo. And so, everything about what we've done in Project Builder and Library is about, and I didn't cover some of this, but we've built a lot of easy ways for people to reach out to the manufacturer in the context of a project, which is when the manufacturer wants to hear from them, and also when the manufacturer can be helpful. We already have a pretty significant analytics platform that all the manufacturers can see not only their data, but the traction that they're getting, but every other manufacturer in the catalog, their competitors, everyone else, because, how do you create, growth in a market is by creating competition. And so we're also building a whole analytics dashboard, in the same vein as a Construct Connect or Dodge data, that will finally give manufacturers who care about growth in the high performance building industry the same kind of lead generation and direct line back to people who are selecting those materials. That's what they've all been waiting for. Like, show me how it pays off. So I think that, yeah, of course there could be more demand. I feel like the demand is growing. I think the EPA with the IRA grants and the demand for EPDs, and there's just so much awareness. I think the real problem, and if I put on my program operator hat, is the EPA has given out millions and millions of dollars of grants to manufacturers to publish EPDs. There's not very many program operators. And program operators didn't get any money to build digital publishing platforms. So, think about this. The EPA spent a ton of money to create demand, but didn't fund the suppliers. So that's a whole thing that's happening too. So, I'm pretty happy with the growth and awareness. Yes, of course, it could be more. Yes, of course, it could be faster, but God, if I think about a decade ago compared to now, it's like not even the same world. And I take it back to, lead version 4.
And, I do have to say, based on what you said at the beginning and what Monica said, we have to buy, people have to buy stuff, Terry, right? You
They
said
have to
people
buy stuff.
We need to
100%.
we need to keep in mind, as a recovering architect, long recovery, 40% on average of preferred products are lost on projects typically. 40%. This is due to value engineering and unwanted substitutions. This is a problem. Putting it in a spec is great. You still are losing 40%. So that fidelity of keeping things in projects is really important, and that's a whole topic that takes a lot more time. But the design through construction process is never smooth, never consistent. It is just like, like people who've been in the industry doing it for a long time know what to expect. And we're a little too happy living in dysfunction, I think, and not addressing dysfunctions that have been going on. Like, how many years did we live with spreadsheets as the main tool? I mean, come on, folks. I mean, luckily now there's a lot of options, but we need to address the practical issues of implementation. We need the science, we need the data, we need things characterized, we need all that. But then we also need to make sure that that information makes a difference in the end. Like Wes said, like, what are those impacts? And how can we're finally getting to a point in 2024 where we can look at what was spec'd versus what was installed and why, and let's target that, because we're not going to get where we need to go if it falls apart in the last mile.
Yeah, 100%. And, not having ever been an architect, but being married to one who's recovering, I entered this space with so many questions about, like, why are things so broken? Like, why is it so hard to get the products that get selected in design actually installed in the project? And I literally have spent the last couple of years trying to understand why and how that happens. And, what are people doing about it? And so now what we built into Project Builder Library is anyone can build a project. When you export a spreadsheet of the project, every product links back to the manufacturer's listing in the catalog, which links to their website. So literally they can say, subs, you cannot ever say you can't source that material. You can't say that because we've given you direct access to the manufacturer to go source that material, and an easy way to find alternatives or substitutions that are eligible. But that, Barbara, that is absolutely, that is the problem right there, that broken connection between specification and pre-construction.
Well, there's very little transparency about
Yeah,
it.
we are hearing more and more manufacturers, people who have been now at this for years. And they're dealing with a spec that requires this and that. And yet none of the products ultimately selected meet that spec. And so I think, that clearly is that we've heard about that transition to the contractors for a long time. And I think the reality is, just looking at the material health component, when we had so little information and spotty and so on and so forth, but there's clearly product categories now where there are many manufacturers.
Yes.
There are hundreds of products available that what was true even 5 years ago, well, we couldn't really find something available, is probably not true today, but it's become accepted as a response, perhaps.
But and that's, Wendy, that's actually exactly why I say, that's why I always start with the data. We've got 2,300 manufacturers and industry associations in over 1,300 master format sections. It's not likely that there's going to be a material or a product that somebody needs where they would not be able to find at least one manufacturer who has some kind of transparency information. And it's not hard to find. So I really have to applaud the manufacturers. I think they're they're trying hard to do this hard stuff.
Okay, we're coming to the end of our time, so I'm just going to do our lightning round and, you can say whatever you want for a minute, but one thing you might think about is what's the single most important outcome if we all work together? We could possibly produce in the next 1 to 2 years. We've had some good ideas come up here. So let me start, Wes, with you.
Thanks. Yeah. Such good discussion. I think what this moment kind of needs is and for this industry in particular, this group that we're talking with is a material health, is really underscoring that it's not a zero-sum game. The decision of low carbon materials or healthy should not be a either or, right? And I think all of us together, I mean, Monica, your group, Safe and Circular, low carbon and circular, low carbon and safe, like there's no reason we can't do these things together. They tend to work best when they are. So I think if we could all kind of help speed adoption of, we don't have to call it something complicated like multi-attribute, but just like better products that tend to be healthier and low carbon. And I think that'll help add value to why things shouldn't be substituted out. It's one thing if someone says, oh, you can substitute something because the performance of it's the same coating or sealant or whatnot. But if there's another thing attached to it, and we're seeing more and more policies around embodied carbon, right? And it's going to be harder to substitute those when folks start really checking that and making sure, did you actually spec that concrete that was the low carbon mix that you designed in? We get that same kind of rationale to other attributes, and we just start making this part of the vernacular of when you're designing buildings and selecting products and installing them. It's an education, it's a training, and it's an awareness builder that I think if we could all, we're already doing it, but if we just continue it for the next couple of years, we can help raise awareness and really make sure that the better products get installed.
Who's next?
Well,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I'll put there's one thing we can do together is we can make safer products. And I'm going to appeal to the manufacturers who may be on the line. Unregulated hazardous chemicals are a ticking time bomb from a risk and liability perspective. And whether they, LEED requires it or somebody specifies it, the manufacturer, I think, has the biggest motivation to make safer products. And it's never been easier to understand what's in your product and to optimize it. So that's one thing I think we can do together.
Barbara?
Money. I'll say that. I agree with Stacy totally. I don't disagree, but two things. One, selfishly, it's another plug for the Global Buyers Club, but unselfishly, whether you use that or not, we need to correlate dollars to outcomes, and we need to leverage the collective power of procurement in ways that we have not yet tapped into as a force for good. We need to pit capitalism against itself, and is how I think about it in a way. Like, it's not literally that, but this is also getting to that construction question because respectfully, subs don't pick non-conforming products because of lack of data. A lot of the time it's because of relationships. This is the relationship I have to a supplier, this, whatever reasons, and the lack of transparency. Like the owners and the design teams, there's a wall of fog between the decisions that get made and then what ultimately happens. And there's a lot of misinformation that comes in both directions. So procurement with transparency and putting those dollars directly to healthy products is one thing. The other thing is innovation. We launched the Innovation Exchange, which, as Dennis from Saint-Gobain is famous for saying, big companies, when times are good, we can't innovate because times are good, we're busy. When times are bad, we can't innovate because times are bad. So we created a dating site for clean tech startups, academic labs, EcoForge is a great company. Resins, all the stuff out of biodegradable, non-toxic, biogenic materials that can be used in plywood, in ACT, and all this stuff. There's a lot of great innovations happening outside of the mainstream companies, but these companies license or buy these subcomponents that help make their products healthier without all the toxins and carcinogens, all that stuff. So we need to help support innovation within the marketplace. We're getting owners to pilot and test and give feedback so facilities can talk to facilities. This product is good. It's great. Don't worry, it won't fail. So between innovation and pointing our dollars and demand towards the healthy outcomes we want, I think those are things in the next year. I want to see a huge jump related to those things in some way.
Carrie.
Can I say what he said, what she said, what she said, what she said? Or do I have to stick to one thing? Yeah, I think that knowledge sharing and collaboration is great. But I also think, everybody that you've convened on this summit, Wendy, has really deep expertise and knowledge. And I think that has to keep going. People have to keep going deep and somehow finding a way of, bringing it to the surface and shareable. So, I think that all of us are working on some aspect of, what's needed to move the market, and, knowledge sharing, collaboration, bring light to the topics like you've done today, just needs to keep going.
Okay, Monica, final thoughts. You're muted.
Yeah, I don't want to have the last word in this great group, but Barbara, you mentioned supporting innovation, and I've been thinking about how we can just support each other. I feel like all of us in this group, and I'm sure, folks that are participating in this symposium beyond this group, we all have frustrations and also experience and capabilities, and have had successes in breaking through. And I'm just, if I just think that if you're a specifier, for example, that is trying to specify healthier materials and products, and then seeing that those things that you're trying to get into projects are getting switched out, or if you're working for a product manufacturer and you're trying to encourage the use of safer chemicals and materials, and it's just not happening well enough or fast enough. Let's figure out a way where we can support each other. I invite you to call me, and I hope everybody else on this in this panel would do the same, to just kind of share our experience, put people in contact with folks in our networks to sort of help everybody, move this work forward and create some positive impact. I guess I'll just leave on that note.
Well, that's a great note to leave on, because that's what this symposium is all about. It's the power of open, collaborative innovation, and we all are doing it. It's a messy process, but it's proven to be, I think, in many industries, the fastest route to transformation. And I think as we we've heard some great ideas here come out, certainly food for thought for me, how we can help on a couple of these pressure points to move the ball to that next step. And I think that incremental progress all together has got us at a place today. We're just using HPDs as a measure. We have over 1,000 manufacturers We have over 13,000 published HPDs that report on over 40,000 individual building products. And if you've looked at those reports lately, they're exceptionally detailed. And all the work that everyone on our committees and everyone has poured in, the feedback to advance that standard, so that now we have actually an accurate, accepted method for reporting on a complex substance like a polymer. That didn't exist when we started. And people threw up their hands and say, you never have it. It's not possible. So I know from my experience in the tech industry and working on some of the grand challenges of science, that what we need to do is pick a few targets and build that coalition of the willing, build that group together and go after them. And if we do that, I think we will start to see those breakthroughs. And a few of those breakthroughs, if we get to a point where a few product categories actually have safer products available, not just products that don't have as many difficult chemicals as another one. That's, I think, that would be my parting thing. Let's focus on a few sweet spots, those low-hanging fruit, the lowest hanging, go after a couple of them and see if we can't, and then report it everywhere, make it usable everywhere, make it go throughout that entire, from the ingredient supplier all the way to the final designed into the project procurement process. So with that, I want to thank all of our attendees today. I know many of you were not able to be here for this session. Hopefully you'll tune in online and hear the recording, because it's a conversation that's actually giving me a little bit of goosebumps here. I think it's so exceptional that we have a group like this that can work together as we do. And let's keep making progress, and hopefully we can convene again next year and hear all the great progress that's happened. So thank you to all of our panelists, all of our presenters today. It's been an honor to be able to host this, and let's go out there and advance material health practice. Thank you all very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Wendy.
Wendy.
Thanks,
And
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.